Hello everybody, super excited to be here again. Cassie Jo Ardrey currently serves the Assistant Director of the Career Readiness Center, and I am just super excited to spend some time talking with you all and really just kind of to get to know some of the experiences that you all have had, and even I think further than that to really maybe get some feedback as well as like how can we help support you all more, how can we get information for you to help again bridge gaps. Whether that be from my office, the international office, any of the resource offices that are here on campus. So I'm super excited to be here with y'all, and I thank you for your time, and I'm so excited to get this conversation started. I did want to take a moment really quickly here to allow each of you to introduce yourselves. So I am going to allow you all to introduce yourselves and just tell us a little bit about yourself, what brought you here to HSC, and whatever you'd like to share. And we'll start right here.
Thank you. Can we go to the hello? You have to do
Oh, get up on the top. There we go.
Perfect. Hi, Cassie. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and I'm very happy to be here. My name is Nadia. I'm a first-year student with School of Public Health, pursuing my master's in public health, focus on maternal and child health, and I am from Tanzania. Yeah,
Wonderful.
East Africa. Thank you. Nice to be here.
Hello everyone, my name is Nana. I am a third-year PhD student in School of Biomedical Sciences. I was looking for a lab that does addiction research that is going to pay my fees, and I realized that there were a ton of Ghanaians in the University of North Texas Health Science Center, so it felt like home, and I didn't need any convincing, just jumped right into it. Yeah.
Hello everyone, I am Dhruvi Pradhan, a second-year student at the School of Public Health. Welcome to HSC. I hope you've liked your time here so far. And what brought me to HSC was actually really simple. I'm close with family.
Hello, I'm Dalila Coimbra, and I'm from Brazil. I came to the HSC because I was interested in seeking research in the area of public health, and I'm second year biostats major.
Hello everyone, I'm Temiloluwa Bolaji Oyenekom, but you can call me Temi. I am with the School of Biomedical Sciences, pursuing my Master's of Science in Biomedical Sciences. The dream is to go to medical school afterwards, so I am sort of on the pre-med track. I am from Nigeria, that's West Africa, and I chose HSC because it's close to family. I was tired of constantly moving away from family to pursue my academic career, so I was like, okay, I'm just gonna stay in Texas, right? Because stay with my aunts, yeah.
Hello, my name is Rohit Balasundram. I am a third-year doctoral student at the School of Public Health. I'm from India. I chose HSC because I got an opportunity to work with Dr. Wen, who's my advisor. She's a well-experienced epidemiologist, and my PhD is in epidemiology. So while I was looking for doctoral programs, we had a pretty good connection. So I got the opportunity to work with her, so I chose HSC for that.
Wonderful. Thank you all for sharing a little bit of information about yourselves, where you're from, and what brought you here to HSC. To kind of just dive in some questions. I don't want to make assumptions here, but definitely want to hear about your experiences around, did you suffer from culture shock or homesickness? And if so, how have you managed that?
You're waiting to...
Okay. I think every culture has something surprising. For me, a cultural shock to be here was, well, this is going to be funny, but sushi?
Yeah.
Or medium rare steak. That's something I'm not used to from back home. We do not have cold meals. And particularly because I think we have so much food and waterborne diseases at home that we cannot afford to have cold meals. So everything we have is pretty much hot and very well made. So I remember a day when I went to taste steak, and I asked for very, very well done.
Burn it.
And my friend says, "Are you sure? That's like going to be so hard to chew on." I'm like, that's what I need.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess you find support from the people around you, making new friends, people you can rely on and trust to help you make the right decisions.
Absolutely. No, thank you for sharing that. And I think you make a great point, right? Especially I would say in the South, or even maybe more so in Texas. I think having your steak cooked a certain way, right? But I appreciate you just sharing that. And I think that just like you said, from even, you know, a eating experience, how different that can look, and being able to navigate that. How would you say that, like, in that navigation, other than like having your friends that kind of help walk you through that or ask those questions, did you feel comfortable saying, no, I'm good with having it like fully cooked, or, you know, I'm not comfortable trying it medium rare, or things like that?
Right. I mean, that's the beauty of it. I think the people here in Texas, and probably if I can generalize this statement, I feel like people in the United States are very welcoming and understanding when it comes to differences in culture. And they're able to help you navigate through the system. And I really appreciate that very much. And it helps me cope up with the differences from back home.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. Does anybody else have any experiences that they want to share around any culture shock that they've experienced in coming to the United States?
Well, mine may be a little funny as well, but it's transportation. Honestly, it's hard for me to understand that for you to reach point A to point B, you need a car. Because back home, in India at least, we have like, the public transport was so good that you could just hop on a bus and you reach point A to point B, no personal transport, and you're fine. But out here, especially as an international student who does not own a car, it's like we have to walk everywhere, or Uber, which is not always feasible. You know, it gets a little expensive. So that was a bit of a culture shock for me. And homesickness, yes. It starts to creep in, I think, a semester in, because the first semester you're excited, new place, you're meeting new people. But once the semester is done, you feel like you're missing something. And it takes a while to figure out that's probably home. So yes, I did feel, it crept up to me more in the third semester, because I was like, I'm close to getting done, but not close to being home. So that was one of the things that I experienced. And to manage it, it was more like, I found family here. Like, I have wonderful, wonderful friends in HSC, and I'm thankful to meet them because they make me feel welcome and not so much that I'm alone. So there's that.
I love that, and I'm so happy that the folks here at HSC, hopefully the other support systems resources that we offer, help you all acclimate and feel supported in those ways in which you aren't able to be supported from your traditional support networks, right?
Yes.
So,
actually, to add to that, the resources in HSC are really good too, because I had like a good talk with the care team, and sometimes I realized that you need someone else to tell you it's okay. You're
Absolutely.
Okay and you're doing great. So yes, that was really helpful for me to be at peace with my mental status right at this moment. So yes, that was really helpful.
wonderful. We're always happy to hear you all utilizing these resources, and not just utilizing them, but that they're helpful, right? That we are making a difference in offering these resources. So thank you for sharing. Anybody else last comments on culture shock and homesickness?
For me, it was the language. It was a huge barrier for me, and I think everyone would used to say, "Oh, talk to people," but I'm very shy, and it's very difficult. And in my class, there is a lot of people from India, and the accent for me is very difficult. People who speak mainly Spanish or Portuguese like me, the accent makes sense in my head. It was really difficult for me, and I remember that I went to the CAP office, and I used all the resources, mentorship, writing, because it was a huge barrier for me. And career readiness was really helpful, because I had to do my CV and go to interviews. And when language is a barrier during stressful moments and interviews, it's very difficult.
Thank you for sharing, and I think you make a great point, right? In the communication barriers, right? Whether that's accent, whether that's even like our proximity and body language, right? Like all of these things can be challenging for anyone, right? And so I just appreciate you sharing that, and again, utilizing your resources. So thank you. The next question is, and some of you have already touched on this. So far, you've talked about making friends, having community, obviously finding the resources and support networks here. What are some of the experiences that you cherished so far from your time here at HSC? Go ahead.
I genuinely enjoy the fact, well, I don't know how others might feel about this, but for me, being in Fort Worth, seeing squirrels run around, acorns falling, beautiful leaves changing colors, that's an experience for me, and I genuinely cherish that. Back at home, we don't have fully blown 4 seasons, but sometimes you get to experience all 4 in one day.
Right?
Right, that's what I'm told. So
Yes.
I feel genuinely blessed to be here and experience this part of nature.
I love that. No, and it seems so simple, but how impactful, right?
Yes.
How impactful that can actually be, to be like, no, I actually get to experience the leaves changing color, watching the animals go and eat the acorns, right? Yeah. I walk around campus to do like just kind of like a 15-minute health walk. Same thing. I will just stop and watch these squirrels. I'm like, look at y'all out here just doing what y'all are doing. Yeah.
I've been filming videos and sending
I
them
love
back
that.
home. I'm like, look at this cute little thing.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else have any really just unique, impactful experiences since you've been here at HSC that you want to share with everyone?
Well, I would say honestly would be how approachable all the faculty members are. That was not something that I experienced back home, because it was more like there was always a divide. That's a teacher and you're a student. You can't just go there and talk about, say, what's bothering you. It was always a stigma present back home. But here it's great and also a little scary at times, because I can approach them, but to what extent? I mean, it's great to talk to them about what you feel, and also sometimes, that you're finding it difficult adjusting to this new semester, or the subject is a little terrifying. But I like the fact that they're so approachable. And we also have those office hours, so if you're not okay with talking in class, you can always go personally, they respect that. And that's something I found that's really good at HSC. Even the dean is approachable, which was something that I was like, great. Honestly, back at home, I was like, the principal is just, you see them pass by and that's about it. But here the dean stops by, if he's in the corridor, he talks to you for a minute, he says how our class is, he's so invested. And that is really something that I appreciate, that I felt something like that when I was at HSC.
I love that.
I think I'm going to remember that when I graduate.
I love that. No, and I think that speaks volumes too, to right, like just the student experience in general, right? But like the culture that we have here at HSC. And I think when I think about like just knowing that I could go and approach a dean and like I'm having a conversation with you, right? And there's not that power dynamic so much that just is reinforced in some spaces. So I appreciate you acknowledging that, having that experience, and so thankful that we are, living a culture that allows those types of communications to happen. Anybody else have any really unique experiences they want to share?
I'm just gonna say something because I feel I've been quiet for a while. I don't have so much experiences just because I started in June, I think, and it's just a year program. But just in that short time, I have come to realize like the sense of community that HSU does have, as far as like the people and the fact that there's always food on campus.
That too.
Oh my God. Like I'm like, oh, I have to find where the free food is at, and I always find free food. It's just they're aware that students do have needs, and they take those needs into consideration, and so that is just amazing. And yeah, I love it here. Made a good choice.
Anybody else? No, thank you for saying that. And I think to your point, like having food on campus and then also having the resource of the food pantry, right? So again, and also like the mindfulness I hope that we are showing in that you have different meals that you eat, right? And things like that, and making sure that those are things that we are considerate of, right? Especially from an international perspective. So thank you for sharing those things. Yeah, absolutely.
Talk about food pantry, and really from orientation I feel so blessed to find that here. Not just being able to utilize the services, but to be a part of it.
Yes.
As a part of community service. It's so good. Even when I heard about laptops being available for students to check out, I've never seen that anywhere.
Yeah.
Things like wearable jackets that I am not good with formal dressing. It's culturally different.
Sure.
Because back at home, a formal dress is something else, and here it's something else. But the fact that there is that resource available for us to understand what an official would look like in this part of the world, and to access those clothes and the laptops and name it. I mean, anywhere that you're stuck as a student, the culture here embraces you, which is lovely to see.
Oh, I love to hear that. And especially from a career readiness standpoint, right? To have that closet available, right? Not just from an economic standpoint, but just from this, that looks different from where I'm from. And so I appreciate just the recognition of that, and I'm thankful that that's a resource that is being utilized and is valued, like as always. And obviously with the food pantry, right? We have the holiday of Thanksgiving coming up next week. Today they're doing pack some bags, and so another opportunity talking about the community service. And then also if you need some food for the holiday, that's there for you. So I'm super excited about that and thankful that we're able to provide that and be a part of it. I want to kind of dive back into my arena of career readiness, and obviously you all are here to do what? Get a job, right? But what would be some things that some of you are maybe taking into consideration, or you've already experienced having a background as an international student, how that will affect your ability to get a job here? Or back home, either way. So what would be some of the things that you have considered, are considering? What are some of those aspects that when you are done with your program and you are ready to enter their workforce, what are some of the experiences or things that you contemplate about just having that experience as an international student? I'd love to just hear some of your thoughts on that.
You go for it.
So I did my master's here in Denver, and I've been to the job market as an international student. So speaking from that perspective, they weigh your experience from outside of US much less compared to your experience that you have here. So the experience you have here is weighted more in the application cycles. You're looking for jobs. So if you have more experience here, that puts you definitely at an advantage. And the other thing is obviously visa sponsorship. So once you're done with the program, depending on what type of program it is, you either get a 1 or 3 year OPT. I got the 1 year, and a lot of the jobs in public health are in the government sector. So despite whatever concentration you have taken, you have to pivot to the roles that would offer sponsorship. And sponsorships are offered for roles that are highly competitive, highly demanding skill. So you have to put in that extra effort during your master's program to gain those extra skills, even if it's an unpaid position or whatever you have to do, reach out to your faculty, reach out to any job, even if they have some opportunity to build those skills. So and that's dynamic, that keeps changing every market cycle. So that's another obstacle that you have to be aware of.
No, and I appreciate you sharing that. And I think when I think about obviously the obstacles through the visa, things like that, but really to your point in speaking to how employers don't value your experiences outside the United States the same way, and how that's a cultural barrier that some employers don't understand, that while you did this in a different country and maybe, you know, in a different environment, that doesn't mean that those experiences and those skill sets aren't transferable here in the United States, right? So that's real, right? We know that happens, and which is an unfortunate barrier that you all obviously are impacted by. But I think that just in the US workforce, we're doing ourselves a disadvantage of kind of keeping that barrier there, right? So I appreciate you sharing that.
I think India probably, to think from the other side, is that they're unable to evaluate our experiences more effectively.
Yeah.
That is the barrier, because even though we say it, they're unable to, or they don't know how their experience translates here. So they're unable to evaluate our experience and judge us based on that.
Yes, no, that's a great point. That's a great point. Anybody else?
So I'll state the obvious one that we all do not like to talk about, and that's the racial barrier. Of course, I'm sure if you do this every year you hear the same statement, right? And I look at it a little differently. Usually, the subject of race has a negative connotation, but think about it this way, and if we can all be honest with ourselves. Think about your personal biases. People don't like new things. People say, well, I like to try new food and all, but like really, if you were going somewhere and you were lost and you saw two people, one of them in your like with the same pigmentation as you, another one different, who are you following? You're definitely, you don't know either of them, but you're definitely going with who you know. Apply that to think about yourself as an employee now. Two people, one of them in your same like pigmentation, the other one not. If they had the same qualifications, you have a kind of like a bias. You lean more towards one side, and I think that is where we are a little disadvantaged, because the companies we want to work for are run by people that come from here, and we don't come from here, and that becomes a challenge. I hear people frown on it, but I like to be objective and think that this is what it is. So what can I do to, circumvent this challenge? And I think that the awareness of this without like necessarily fighting it lets you know that you have to kind of stand out. So make the most of the time you spend in school, which brings me to internships. So just a big piggyback of what he said, he spoke about people valuing the experience that you have here. So I'm a pharmacist from Ghana. I have a PharmD in Ghana. If I come here, I've never worked here before because I'm on an F1, so I can't work. And PhD 4 years, I come out of school and I want to work for a big pharma company. Now I'm competing with someone that has had experience since high school, doing internships, university, something. And I have not had any internship opportunity because for some reason the School of Biomedical Sciences does not really, encourage internships. It has to be a personal kind of contractual agreements between you and your PI because they pay you every month. But I think that's a big challenge because that's the only way I have one foot in the door. My sister was in University of Arizona. She had an opportunity to intern with Merck. Right out of school, she did a Merck interview and she got the job because they were familiar with her and her experience like he mentioned. But if I don't have that, where do I start from?
Wow, that's super impactful. And I think one of the things that came to mind for me is where are the opportunities for us, right, to build those relationships and be intentional behind providing those opportunities, right? Because I think you're right. That goes back to networking, right? You're falling back on your faculty to write you the letter to say, yes, you want this person, right? And things like that. And so, and again, the devaluation of your previous work experience outside the United States, right? So I really appreciate you sharing that, and to implicit and explicit bias, right? We know these things are real. We all have them, right? We all have them, right? And I think when we talk about that in the workplace, it does require us all to be aware of our biases, right? And to help mitigate them, to be aware, to be mindful of those things. And so I just appreciate you bringing that to the table and being vulnerable in that, because I do believe that those are the kinds of conversations that we need to be having, right? We need to be talking about these things that we might be in our own way creating some of these barriers that we don't even realize we're making, right? Based upon these things. So thank you for that. That was really, really, really powerful. Anybody else want to share as far as just kind of how you feel like being an international student will impact your future employment?
Echoing to what they've made very powerful points. I'm learning in this forum as well. It feels to me like ever since I got here, it feels to me like there are job positions here that you don't necessarily find back at home. The whole definition of public health, I feel like, is different from back home. Back home, a public health specialist, I feel, would be responsible for research, evidence generation, and basically, doing as much research as they can and progressing in that arena, working with NGOs and things like that. But public health here is internalized into the government, and you have a work position for public health where they're able to meet people at home visits, and things like, we have social workers for that back home. So the definition of a public health personnel is different in this part of the world, it feels to me. This is just the way he echoed, when you have experience from back home, it becomes difficult to defend yourself because the description of the position is different here.
Yes, no, and I think you make a great point in that, and I see this a lot with students when we do just job search, right? We may meet together and be like, hey, I know I'm in public health, I want to do this, but then especially you don't understand how many roles are out there because it's so broad, right? And it can also be so specific, right? And so there's so many different opportunities, and if you don't know, right, what some of those opportunities are, or that was even a position, right? Like that is another barrier, right? And understanding that and just having a definition that's different, right, can also pose a barrier. So no, I appreciate that. And I think that these are all topics that, especially my area, can be even more mindful of, especially for you all, right? Because it's one thing for us to do a job search for somebody that is born, raised, and educated here, right? Versus somebody that doesn't have that experience. And so I appreciate you sharing those things, because I think that gives us all an opportunity to find gaps and opportunities for us to better serve you as an institution while you're here. Let's see. Do you have any experiences that you wish could have been better since you have been here?
Is it like exclusive to HSC or in general?
Let's call it general. If you have an HSC specific, we can talk through that. And if you would just like to share just being here in the United States, you can share that as well.
I think the obvious answer would be the immigration experience, like right from getting your visa to being here. And sometimes when you have your visa expire, then you cannot, you have to go, once you exit the country, you have to go for another interview. And there's a potential they could deny your visa while you're in the middle of the program. So there are many people like myself and who are just kind of stuck here because they're afraid to go through their paperwork again. So for me, I would say it's like the immigration experience puts a lot of stress on a student that in turn affects everything else, kind of like a ripple effect. So that's something that I would say is, obviously it could be better, but it's also not HSC. It's out of HSC's control.
Right. No, that's literally a government, right? That's at that level, and I appreciate you sharing that, because from somebody that obviously has never experienced that, but has heard, right, the hoops, the hurdles, all the things that you all have to go through consistently, and doing it over again, not just the first time, and making sure you're within, you know, the ranges of this, and not being able to work, or being able to work under these parameters, right? All of those things are very stressful, right? So I appreciate you sharing that, and hopefully one day we'll have a better system, right? So thank you for sharing that. Anybody else have any other experiences that they wish could have looked differently, or would have been better?
This is also not pertaining to HSC, but technically the rules that we need to follow as international students, that we're really bound by how much we can work and how much we need to study. I understand it's for students so that we can focus primarily on our education, because that's our main goal coming to the United States, but also understanding that by binding us to these particular hours you can work, it's not, sometimes you're not paid enough to pay rent. And hey, that's, how do we survive here? We need that money for rent, we need it for groceries, that's just basic survival. And if you're limiting my time, and it's hard to, sometimes it's really hard to make that every month, and that's just added stress on international students. Not just, coursework is different also, now that I'm a second year, there's internship.
Yes.
So also that, and then most of the times, like since public health may not have paid internships, that's another thing.
Right.
That we are bound by, we have to divide our time between internship and working, and then reduce the work hours. Again, sometimes we just don't meet that, you know, that rent that we need to pay that month.
Yeah.
And that stress is just, I can't explain it. Sometimes it gets so hard to even be like, okay, the next month hasn't even started, but I'm stressing about, can I pay my rent the month after?
Right.
But I just hope that maybe, again, this is a government thing, but if they could just, you know, help us in a way.
Yeah.
Because we're not even eligible for, I think, federal, federal aid.
Right.
Because we're not, you know, students from US. So that kind of, again, limits our resources.
Absolutely. No, and I think obviously from an economic standpoint, right, like you're already in a graduate level program, right? You know, managing time between your internship, your schoolwork, your studying, your grocery shopping, right? Like all of those things, right? And then when you are limited by the income in which you can get to do all of these things, right? Yeah, that sounds like an incredible amount of stress. And who wants to sign up for that, right? Like, or maybe you don't even realize that until you're in it.
Exactly.
Right? And then also from like the working standpoint, right? Like you're here to go to school, to get a job. Like for me, in my mind, right? Like you want that real world work experience here in the United States, right? You're not being offered positions because they're devaluing your work experience in another country, but yet you can't work as much as you need to financially and to gain those experiences, right?
Yes.
So it's a really unique situation, and yeah, I appreciate you bringing that, because I think that that's often overlooked. You know, thinking about you all's experience and even professional and personal development, like those are big barriers. We're not talking about baby hurdles, right? Wow, I appreciate you sharing. Anybody else? Things that they wish might have looked differently? Okay, we're gonna go on to the next question here. And we've touched about this a little bit, but as far as, like, what do you feel like has been the most challenging socially, but maybe even more so academically, from maybe your time in your country? What does that look like? What are some challenges? I know we've talked a little bit about communication barriers, things like that, accents, but what are some of the other areas that maybe you have felt challenges in academically in coming here to study?
The fact that we're so dependent on technology. We study from our laptops. We write notes on our laptops. We submit assignments on our laptops. That was something really new for me, because back home we were pen and paper. Teachers taught on the blackboard, and chalk and board was the best way to go.
Yeah.
But out here, the fact that everything is based on one device, that if that messes up, you are in a lot of trouble.
Yes.
That's what I think one of the biggest challenges that I face. Like, you study from your laptop, you write assignments on your laptop, and you submit assignments on the laptop. So I was like, okay, that is something that took a while to get used to.
Right, just changing the modality in which you learn.
Yes,
right?
because we were more like, we were so used to taking notes while teachers talked about, what they were teaching us in that class, for example. And also when we're studying, we're all like here writing pen and paper. But out here, I see people with, there's a laptop, there's an iPad. And I was like, okay. That is something that I'm like, that's new.
Yeah.
But then also I meet friends who are like, we need that print. We cannot do it on a laptop or an iPad.
Right.
We need that print. So we usually print it out and we make our notes. And I was like, that's how we study.
Yes.
So I guess that was one of the challenges that I faced, like just depending on my device so much.
Yes, and I think that like there's such a great point to that, to even knowing your learning style. Like not just what you've known, but what actually works best for you, right? It may be the laptop once you get acclimated to that, but it may not be. You may need to stick with the pen and the paper, right? You may need to have a recorder and listen back to it again, right? So I appreciate you sharing that, and that I think that's really a unique experience as far as the way in which you are receiving information and retaining information. What else?
I'd like to add to that. Yes. Some to that. Everyone else is like in the early 20s, and I'm early 30s, so I also had like an age gap. And the technology for me was like overwhelming. And I remember the first time I got into the library, I looked around and where are the books?
That was my expression. I was like, where are the books?
Man, this library is strange.
Right. What is this library? Why is there a library with no books in here? Yeah.
And I looked around and everyone else writing on a tablet and typing in a computer with multiple windows open. And I thought, I'm not gonna follow that. So I think it was, and now that I'm better at it, I think it was very important for me because they incentivize us to grow up and learn new technologies. It's like back in my country, they are more cautious with new technology, like, you don't use that, you have to learn by hand, and then you have to learn something like that. But here they incentivize us, go for it, try it, see new things. You have to run with the technology, not against it. It will make you a better professional instead of a worse professional. That was how I was taught before. And I think it's wonderful. I learned so much, so faster. Because I used all the resources that are available.
Yeah. No, and I think that's really interesting. Obviously, being an elder millennial, if you will, seeing a library with no books in it. That is very strange to me, right? But like, I recognize that is now the future, and that there are online ebooks, and that my textbook is now online, right? And so I just appreciate you sharing that, because I do think that those experiences do obviously change our perception of being an older student, right? A non-traditional, like within the age range student, and having these past experiences and how you learned, how you got your information, how you studied, and how that looks different, but how you also are open to the challenge, right? And resilient in, right? Learning technology, understanding that there are new and other ways to do things, and not just from a personal standpoint, but professionally, right? We know technology is here and here to stay. We've got AI in the picture now too. Like, how are we navigating this? But we have to be flexible and resilient in those things, right? So I appreciate you sharing that. Anybody else want to share anything?
I'll just add that I believe the academic standards for international students are just kind of outrageous.
Okay.
Just because you're trying to prove to so many people that you're deserving of that position after graduation. So for me, my situation is like a little unique because I am an international student trying to go to medical school in America, and that's kind of like, what are you doing? I ask myself that question all the time. What am I doing? It's like, the last time I checked, less than 1% of the matriculants into
Yes.
medical school are international students.
Yeah.
So it's like you have to do times 2 of the work. I am getting a master's degree not because I necessarily have to maybe do better with my GPA, but because I know that I have to do times 2 of the work to tell them that I'm worth giving that seat to. So it's like, okay, you need 2 degrees as an international student. You need all this work experience as an international student. You need all this time to prove to them that you're deserving of that. So, I mean, like you said, it builds resilience. And when you see how far you've come, you would tend to appreciate the experience in itself, like for you as a person, even forgetting about the standards there, you know, that are against you. But yeah, it's an interesting journey. It is an interesting journey, and a lot of the times, like, people don't understand you from that perspective, and it's like, yeah, it's different for me, but yeah,
No, that's powerful, and I think that's very true for you all that have the additional barriers, challenges, things like that. And like you said, the expectation to work 2-3 times as hard, to have to do all of these things to get to the same point, to have a seat, potentially have a seat, right? Not even guaranteed a seat, right? A potential seat at the table. And so I just appreciate you sharing that experience, because I do think that it is very valuable that people do understand that experience from an international student perspective, and that even from an academic standpoint, that those are some things that are required of you as of today, right? To get to where you want to be in certain instances that doesn't look that way for other students. So I appreciate you sharing that. Let's see. We talked a little bit about community. How do y'all feel about sharing just kind of becoming more comfortable in starting to build community here? Relationships, kind of learning maybe how to even going to like the communication piece, right? How do I make friends? How do I ask, do you want to be my study partner, right? These are all things. So how would some of you feel comfortable kind of just sharing like your experience, and what were some of the things or ways that you utilize to help to start to build that sense of community here at HSC and just here in the United States?
So I'll say that I have been very lucky. I've been a little spoiled. I always tend to find the right people to associate with. I found in my first year, I found my first friend. We were just both desperate because things were tough and we needed to make make good grades. So he's like, hey, I'm struggling. I say I'm struggling. It was like, all right, we're gonna do this together, and we were able to excel and exceedingly. And through him, I found community. So I found another niche of American friends and such. But culture is still a visible barrier, and it's you couldn't potentially blame anyone for that. It's how we are wired. If you've done things a certain particular type of way since you were age 4, 3, it's ingrained. You meet somebody that doesn't do it that way and it looks strange to you, and vice versa. He feels the same way about it. So for me personally, the one thing I always use as an example is, just like she shared, people here are nice, welcoming, smiling. How are you doing? Small talk in the elevator, right? Until you need something, right? Because where I come from, it's two things. There's two kinds of people. It's either they're nice or they're mean mugging. If they're mean mugging, stay away from them. If they're nice, they're really nice and ready to help. But over here, then it begins to look like this litmus test doesn't work anymore because he's smiling, but it doesn't necessarily mean that, hey, I'm available.
Right, actions don't align with the smile.
Yes.
I guess the words do the walking and they don't go very far. If the actions could do the talking, then we could know who you really are. That's the problem. if you ask me. So my first
We get some
encounter.
snaps out here. Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
that's an artist line. His name is Papa Vis. That's not me. My first encounter, the first time I realized this was in my first year, I think my second week or so. So you know that the surplus store, that's where we get most of our things from.
Yeah.
And we get them for cheap.
Your furniture, your chairs, all the
Yes,
things.
everything.
Yeah.
Miracle. It's the best thing that ever happened to international students because they cost a lot and you can get them for like $5, $10.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's the challenge. You don't have a car and it's heavy. How are you gonna move it?
How you gonna get it home?
Yep. So there's a guy in my class that is nice. I've like hanged with him quite a number of times. So I think, oh, we're good, right? So I'm like, and he has a truck. So can I get this and put it in your bucket?
No.
I don't want to tell the story. It sucked. But that day I felt very stupid. And I didn't even blame him. I blamed myself for trusting so much that, oh, hey, we're good. And after that, you begin to lose trust. So after that, every time you see that trait, it's like you've been conditioned. Stay away from this trait. And it makes you become insecure. I think that is my biggest challenge with the American culture. The fact that I can't predict.
Okay, the uncertainty of
Yes.
your words versus your actions.
Yep.
Right, the follow through.
So I think that, I don't know, we've not spoken about this before, but in my lab, my lab is very helpful. So we work with animals and you have to feed them every day. There are days when you're not feeling well, you still come there like, no, go home. Not because they'll get sick, but it's just because they care about you. Like, you don't need to do this, we can cover, you're good. They do that. But just because of some of these experiences, even when they say go home, you're like,
Do you
I don't
really
know.
mean that?
I don't know.
Like,
Right.
So you stay and then you still work. And it's not their fault. It's not because of anything they've done. It's just because of the initial, like the people you meet initially that disappoint you, that break your heart. I don't know that is ever going to have a fix because again, it's ingrained. Yeah.
So thank you obviously for sharing, but you know what, like something just came to my mind, like just from a resource standpoint, maybe that's a conversation we need to have with surplus and facilities. Maybe there's an opportunity within like a range for them to be able to deliver these things to you all,
Perfect.
right?
Perfect.
Like
That would
there's
be
another
great.
opportunity for us to serve you all, and that literally is a challenge that you all face, right? You have the opportunity to get the things you need, but you can't get them to where it needs to go. So thank you for sharing that, because that kind of was a light bulb for me. Like, hey, maybe there's something we can do there, right? And again, to your point of like, you thought you had a certain kind of relationship with somebody, and when it came down to it, when you needed something, they didn't show up for you, and that's disappointing, right? But I would encourage you and everyone here to not let one experience like that, right, change your entire idea, because I promise you, there are more people that are willing to help you than not. Okay? So please keep that in mind. Don't let that one experience stain what you might believe people's motives are or are not. I do believe that yes, people cannot show up the way that we hope sometimes, but there's going to be 10 others that will. You have something to say?
Well, yes, to second that, I always felt that when you come to a new country, like I've seen that before too, that you kind of want to find people from your same community. You're not really open to, accepting that, okay, I can go and talk to someone else. And I think that is also one of the things that we need to address. Because when I came here, it's like, okay, we're all Indians. I was like, no, there's so many other people in class. You can just go and say hi. What's the worst they can do? Just, brush you off. That's fine.
Right.
I mean, what else can they do? They're just like, oh, okay, we're not interested. I was like, fine, that's fine. But that's at least, you're going somewhere. You're breaking out of that shell. You're not in your own community. You're trying to make friends. And not every time you're going to get a positive response, but you will get a response.
Right.
And you will learn from that response. And then you will know, okay, that person may not look friendly, but it's okay. You can go say hi, and then, you can actually start a conversation. Because I have been wrong on so many fronts sometimes. I was like, she doesn't look friendly. But when you go talk to her, we had like deep conversations for 2 hours. And I was like, I did not know where that time went.
Yes.
So,
yes.
so I think that is something that kind of helped me, just to go say hi.
Yeah.
That's it. Hi, where are you from?
Just
What are you,
engage,
just
right?
like small conversations, how are you doing today? Like the elevator is okay, but just go sit with someone, be like, how was your day? what did you do? Like, what were your challenges?
I
Let's
love
talk about it. And that's how I think I met like a great group of friends. I'm really thankful for that at HSC, and also welcoming like when you work. Like, I've had the opportunity to work at one of the most welcoming offices that's a part of HSC. I work at Healthy Start, and they're just so welcoming. Different people, different backgrounds, and they treat you as an individual, and they respect you as an individual, not just as a student. You may be a student, but they treat you like you're one of them. So I'm like, that is one of the, like he said, I think I'm a little spoiled. So I don't know, what I am truly afraid of is not meeting such kind of people once I get out of HSC. Because like, if I have like one bad experience, I might actually, have that. I don't want to. I was good where I was. Do I really have to change? But I think these are all experiences, and they build up to who you are as a person.
Absolutely. And I think you make a great point of even if you go into a space, right, that maybe isn't as inviting or like caring and things like that, like maybe you can be that change in that space, right? Maybe you show up and be that person for somebody else, right? So I think a lot of times we can take our own lived experience and be able to bring that forth in a space that may not look the way we want it to, right?
Yeah, adding on to the mix. So, sense of community. I feel like, in my personal perspective, I feel like we have different spheres where we can develop community, friends, in class, if we're talking about in class. And so I had a similar experience, but I had to move tins of baby food, which I wanted to donate because I felt like I needed to, and they came in a larger size than I anticipated. So I needed help, and I reached out to a girl in my class. She's local, and she was and she had a flight that day, but she just came through. So, I mean, here we are. We're in my class, we have a group of girls that we talk, and we're 5 girls now, we were 4. All of us are very different. Like 4 different poles, on earth. You look at me. I'm Tanzanian, I'm African. I don't look like one. I could pass off as, I don't know, Hispanic, as Indian. I could just, anybody seeing me could stereotype me anywhere, but I'm not.
Yeah.
Right? And I have friends who are completely different too, and they are all unique in their own special way. And here we are, we hang out together, we share, and I learned so much from them. So I think being positive just helps, I guess.
I love that. I love that. We have just a few more minutes here really quickly to wrap us up here. What are some additional ways that you feel like HSC can continue to support you all?
Ben said it. Internships.
Okay.
Yes.
These guys I sorted were not. Let's get internships. That's the first thing. The second thing is grants. So I sit in a grant writing class, and the whole grant writing class is almost like preparing you for a T32, which internationals do not qualify for. Why am I in the class? So if we're going to, I get that it's our responsibility to find, and my PIs do a good job at that. They know how to find grants that you would qualify for, but maybe not everyone has that kind of PI. So maybe it should be a part of it. If you're finding T32s for people here, for as long as you are admitting international students, find grants that they can apply to. So yeah, those 2 things.
Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that. Anybody else?
Yeah, I just second the internship aspect. Just because like I said, work experience is huge for my own path. I was just lucky enough to already have work experience before starting this program, and so that's why, when I started getting to the whole hassle of approving internship, I was just like, yeah, I'm just gonna let it go. But a student could come here and they would, like, their next step may depend on getting an internship, and I think it's doable for international students to have internships, because my undergrad, you could get an internship as an undergrad international student. So I don't know if we need to talk to some people, but
Yes.
it's very doable, and you can still be within the immigration policies.
Yes.
Because I think that's usually the issue, like making sure they're within the immigration policies. But I think it's something we need to address, and we need to address soon.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I may loop some of you in some of those conversations, right, to really provide that perspective, right? It's one thing for us to be like, hey, we have this idea, but let me tell you why. Let me tell you exactly why and how this is impacting you all. So I appreciate that. Anybody else want to share really quickly before we wrap up?
So I think one comment that I want to make is about tutoring services. So there's this class that I'm teaching for, and every year students have problem with that class, and when they reach out for a tutor, there's no tutor available. And this happens every single year. This is like my third year being a TA for the class. So I would say if you have a class that's consistently, students are finding difficult, like help with the tutor ahead. Like try to do, it's like my third year here and it's the same problem. So I would say, by this time you should have something figured out for,
Sure.
at least for the next cohort, because I'm sure they're going to have problems, and especially international students, because this is a tech heavy class, so they're going to have more problems for sure. So have something figured out and do what it takes to kind of solve that.
Thank you for sharing that. And again, all of this information, all of your perspectives today, your vulnerability, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I've learned so much. It helps me be more cognizant of a lot of things, right? And I just appreciate you all sharing your experience with us. And I hope that in any way, shape, or form that you all still feel empowered to approach anybody on this campus with whatever needs you may have. And I'm just so excited for your future. I am so excited to see where you go beyond HSC. And again, I just thank you all for your time today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really quickly, if you all will scan this QR code, this is going to be a survey about today's time. So if you would do that, we would much appreciate it. And again, thank you all. We so appreciate you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.